Lyra stood at the window of her small room, looking at the 3 moons that hung in the purple sky. Tonight was her last night on Viridia, the planet she had never felt at home on. She was taller than most females of her kind, with sharp angles to her face and a strong build that made her look more like the hunters of old than the soft, round-faced beauties that Viridian males wanted. Too tall, too strong, too different, she whispered to herself, words she had heard all her life. The mirror showed her the truth that had kept her alone for 28 cycles. Her skin was the right shade of pale blue. Her eyes had the normal golden glow. But her face was too sharp, her arms too muscled, her height too great. Where other Viridian women were small and delicate like flowers, Lyra looked like she could win a fight. And on Viridia, that was wrong for a female. Lyra packed the last of her things into her travel bag. The message that had changed her life sat on her desk. Official approval for her request to join the Unity space station as a junior diplomat. Unity was the first place where many species lived and worked together. Humans, Viridians, and 10 other alien races all trying to build something new. A place where I might finally belong, she hoped, but didn't truly believe. Her family had not come to say goodbye. Her mother had cried when Lyra told them she was leaving. Not sad tears, but relieved ones. Perhaps off-world you will find someone who doesn't mind your shape, her mother had said, not unkindly. The transport ship would leave at first light. Lyra took one last look at the city below her window, the gleaming towers that housed families she would never be part of. The marriage festivals she had attended year after year, always watching, never chosen. The last festival had been the worst. Taller than every male there, she had stood alone while even the oldest females were selected. One male had approached, looked her up and down, and simply walked away without a word. That night, she had applied for the Unity position. Morning came quickly. At the transport center, other Viridians kept their distance from Lyra, as if her difference might spread to them. The official checked her papers twice, as if doubting someone like her could be chosen for Unity. "You understand this is a 5-year posting?" he asked, his doubt clear in his voice. "Yes, I hope to extend it if possible," Lyra replied. The official's eyes widened. "You don't plan to return for mate selection?" Lyra looked at him directly, something Viridian females rarely did. "There is no point. As you can see, I am not suitable." The ship was cold and empty. Few Viridians traveled off-world. Lyra sat alone, watching her planet grow smaller through the viewing port. She didn't cry. She had done enough of that over the years. The ship's captain, a human male with dark skin and kind eyes, stopped by her seat. "First time leaving home?" he asked. Lyra nodded, surprised at his friendly tone. "You'll like Unity," he said. "All sorts there. No one quite fits in, which means everyone does, in their own way." He smiled and moved on, but his words stayed with Lyra. Could there really be a place where being different wasn't wrong? As the ship entered jump speed, Lyra closed her eyes. Behind her was a world where she had never belonged. Ahead was unknown space and a station of mixed species. She had no idea what waited for her there, but anything was better than the life she was leaving behind. For the first time in years, Lyra felt something like hope. Unity Station hung in space like a giant wheel, spinning slowly to create gravity for its 10,000 residents. Lights glowed from 1,000 windows as Lyra's transport ship moved toward the docking bay. "First time on Unity?" asked the human pilot as they approached. "Yes," Lyra said quietly. She still wasn't used to how easily humans talk to strangers. "You'll get lost at least 10 times in your first week," he laughed. "We all do." The ship docked with a gentle bump. Lyra gathered her few bags and followed the other new arrivals into the station. The air smelled different, a mix of smells from many worlds. The corridors were wide, built to fit beings of all sizes. And what beings they were! Lyra had seen images of other species, but nothing prepared her for walking among them. Tall, 4-armed Carracks moved past her, their skin patterned like night skies. Small, round bubba waddled by in groups, talking excitedly. And humans, so many humans, in all sizes and colors, louder than any Viridian would be in public. For the first time in her life, Lyra didn't feel too big. A small screen on her wrist showed the way to her new home. She followed the map to the Viridian section of the station. Her heart sank as she entered. It looked just like home. The same curved doorways, the same soft blue lights, the same small, delicate Viridians who turned to stare at her as she entered. The whispers started at once. "Is that a female? So tall. How strange. Why would they send someone like that to represent us?" Lyra kept her eyes down and hurried to her room. It was small but private, with a window looking out to the stars. She put her bags down and tried not to cry. "Welcome to Unity," she told herself. "Same problems, different place." The next morning, Lyra reported to the diplomatic center. Her new boss, a senior Viridian diplomat named Talek, looked her up and down with clear disapproval. "You will work in the back office," he said firmly. "Preparing reports and data, not meeting with other species." Lyra had expected this. On Viridia, females like her were always hidden away. "Yes, sir," she said, keeping her voice calm though her hands shook with anger. Her desk was in a corner, away from the main area where other diplomats met visitors. For 2 days, she worked alone, speaking to no one. On the third day, everything changed. A human male walked into the back office, looking for help. He was tall, with light brown hair and eyes, the color of Viridia's oceans. His name tag read Jack Reed, Engineering. "Sorry to bother you," he said, smiling at Lyra. "I need information about Viridian power systems. They sent me back here to ask." Lyra stood up, automatically making herself smaller as she had been taught. "I can help you," she said softly. Jack looked up at her, really looked, and his smile grew wider. "Great, I'm Jack." "Lyra," she replied, surprised he had asked her name. As she showed him the data he needed, Jack asked questions, not just about power systems, but about her. Where on Viridia she was from, how long she had been on Unity, if she liked it here. No one had shown interest in her like this before. "You know a lot about engineering for a diplomat," Jack said when they finished. Lyra felt her face warm with the Viridian version of a blush. "I studied it before diplomatic service. We're short-handed in engineering," Jack said. "We could use your help with the Viridian systems sometimes. Would you be interested?" Before Lyra could answer, Talek appeared, looking shocked to see her talking to a human. "Mr. Reed," Talek said quickly, "if you need diplomatic assistance, I am available." Jack smiled at the smaller Viridian. "Thanks, but Lyra and I were just making plans to work together on the station's power systems. She's exactly what I need." Lyra couldn't believe what she was hearing. No one had ever said that about her before. Exactly what I need. For the next 2 weeks, Lyra split her time between her boring diplomatic duties and helping Jack with the Viridian power systems. The engineering work made her happier than she had been in years. Jack treated her like she was normal, not strange or wrong. "Hand me that tool, would you?" Jack said as they worked inside a narrow power tunnel. Lyra passed him the strange human tool. Their fingers touched for a moment, and she pulled back quickly. Jack noticed. "Sorry," he said. "Do Viridians not like to be touched?" "It's not that," Lyra said, her voice quiet. "On my world, no one touches females like me." Jack stopped working and looked at her. "Females like you? What does that mean?" Lyra didn't know how to explain. How could a human understand Viridian beauty rules? "I am not the right kind of female," she tried. "Too tall, too strong-looking." Jack laughed, then stopped when he saw her face. "Wait, you're serious? Your people think there's something wrong with how you look?" Lyra nodded, feeling the shame she always felt when talking about this. "That's the strangest thing I've heard," Jack said, shaking his head. On Earth, humans come in all shapes and sizes. Nobody's wrong. Really? Lyra asked. She had noticed humans were all different from each other, but thought they must have their own rules about who was acceptable. Really, Jack confirmed. Some humans like tall partners, some like short, some like thin, some like strong. There's no one right way to be. This idea was so new to Lyra that she didn't know what to say. They went back to work, but Jack's words stayed in her mind all day. The next evening, Jack invited her to the station's main eating area. "You've been here 3 weeks and haven't seen the best part of Unity yet," he said. Lyra was nervous. The eating area would be full of people from all species. "I don't think I should," she said. "Come on," Jack said with a smile that made her want to say yes. "The food from Earth is amazing. You have to try pizza." When they entered the big, noisy room, Lyra wanted to run away. It was crowded with beings of all types. A few Viridians sat together at one table, and they stared at Lyra with shock as she walked in with Jack. Jack led her to a table and went to get food. While she waited, 3 Viridian males approached her. "What are you doing here?" one asked. "And with a human." "I work with him," Lyra said, trying to sound confident. The tallest male leaned in. "You bring shame to all Viridians. Everyone is talking about the strange female who acts like she's normal." Jack returned with trays of food just in time to hear this. He put the trays down and stood tall, looking directly at the Viridian males. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice friendly but firm. The Viridians backed away. "This is not your business, human," one said. "Lyra is my friend and colleague," Jack said. "That makes it my business." The Viridians looked confused. On their world, no male would defend a female like Lyra. "Your kind have strange tastes," one said before they walked away. Jack sat down, angry. What was that about? Lyra felt both embarrassed and touched by Jack's defense. "They think you must be wrong in some way to want to be seen with me." "That's ridiculous," Jack said. He pushed a flat, round food toward her. "Here, try pizza. It's better than talking about narrow-minded people." As they ate, Lyra noticed something interesting. Around them, beings of all types sat together, talked, and shared food. A tiny Bubba laughed with a huge Carex. Humans sat with every type of alien. For the first time, Lyra wondered if there might be a place for her in this mixed-up world after all. Not as someone wrong or strange, but just as herself. Over the next 2 months, Lyra and Jack spent more and more time together. In the mornings, she worked at her diplomatic post. In the afternoons, she helped in engineering. And in the evenings, they explored Unity Station together. Jack showed her his favorite places: the observation deck where stars stretched out forever, the garden level where plants from 20 worlds grew together, and the music hall where species from across the galaxy shared their songs. "I never thought I would see such things," Lyra told Jack one evening as they watched a sunset from the observation deck. On this side of the station, the light from the nearby star turned everything golden. "There's a whole universe out there," Jack said. "Too big for anyone's small rules about who belongs where." Lyra had begun to stand taller, to speak more loudly. The other Viridians still avoided her, but now she had friends. Jack's human engineering team, who valued her skills, and even some Carex diplomats who found her height perfectly normal. One day, Lyra was called to her boss's office. Talek looked more serious than usual. "We have received a message from the Viridian Council," he said. "They are concerned about your behavior." Lyra felt cold fear in her stomach. "My behavior? You spend time with non-Viridians. You work in engineering without permission. You speak directly to males, as if you are their equal." Talek's voice grew harder with each word. "This is not how a proper Viridian female acts." "I am doing my job well," Lyra said. "And what I do in my free time is my choice." Talek's eyes widened at her words. "The Council wants you to return to Viridia for adjustment training." Lyra knew what that meant. They would try to make her act small and quiet, to accept her place as an unwanted female who should hide away. "I will not go," she said, surprising herself with her courage. "You have no choice," Talek said. "A ship arrives tomorrow. You will be on it." That evening, Lyra told Jack everything as they sat in his quarters. Tears ran down her blue face. "They can't force you to go," Jack said. "You have rights here on Unity." "Not against my own government," Lyra said. "They will cancel my position." Jack was quiet for a long time. Then he took her hand, something he had never done before. "What if you had a reason to stay, a reason even the Viridian Council would have to accept?" Lyra didn't understand. "What reason?" "On my world, if two people from different countries marry, they can usually live in either place. Does Viridia have anything like that?" Lyra's heart beat faster. "We have the mate bond law. If a Viridian takes a mate from another world, they can choose where to live." She stopped, realizing what Jack was suggesting. "But Jack, you don't mean—" "I'm not asking for real marriage," Jack said quickly. "Just a formal mate bond for the law, to help you stay. You would do that for me?" Lyra couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Of course," Jack said. "You're my friend. I care about you. And Unity needs you. You're the best engineer I have." Lyra felt both happy and sad. Jack wanted to help her, but only as a friend. Still, it was more than anyone had ever offered her before. "The mate bond is serious on my world," she told him. "Once registered, it would be hard to break." Jack squeezed her hand. "I'm serious about helping you." That night, Lyra couldn't sleep. Jack was willing to tie himself to her to save her from returning to Viridia. It was the kindest thing anyone had ever done for her. But as she looked at the stars through her window, she wondered if friendship was all she felt for the human who had changed her life. The next morning, Jack and Lyra went to the Unity legal office together. The human clerk looked surprised when they explained what they wanted. "A Viridian human mate bond?" she asked. "We haven't done one of those before." "It's allowed under both our laws," Jack said firmly. The clerk nodded. "I'll need to contact both governments. Come back in 3 hours." They went to work, trying to act normal. Lyra felt like everyone was watching her. Maybe they were. News traveled fast on Unity Station. When they returned to the legal office, they found not just the clerk, but also Talek and Captain Moore, the human leader of Unity. "This is unusual," Captain Moore said. "Talek has concerns about this mate bond." Talek stepped forward. "This cannot be real," he said. "No human would choose a female like Lyra as a mate. This is clearly a trick to avoid the Council's orders." Jack's face turned red. "What do you mean, a female like Lyra?" "Look at her," Talek said, as if it was obvious. "She is not correct. Too tall, too strong. Not a proper female." Captain Moore looked confused. "I don't understand the problem." "On Viridia," Lyra explained quietly, "females are supposed to be small and delicate. I am not. What males want." Jack suddenly stood up straighter. "Well, this male wants her exactly as she is." Everyone stared at him. Lyra felt her heart beating so fast she thought it might burst. "I was going to suggest this mate bond as a way to help Lyra stay," Jack continued. "But the truth is, I care about her. A lot. And not just as a friend." He turned to Lyra, his eyes serious. "I didn't plan to say this now, or like this, but I don't want to pretend. I want a real mate bond with you, Lyra, if you want that too." Lyra couldn't speak. All her life, she had been told she was wrong, that no one would ever want her. And now this human was saying he did, in front of everyone. "This is against our ways," Talek said, but he sounded less sure now. Captain Moore smiled. "But not against Unity's ways. We're all about different species finding common ground." "Lyra," Jack said softly, "you don't have to answer now. I know this is sudden. But Lyra didn't need time. For once in her life, she knew exactly what she wanted. "Yes," she said, "I want a real mate bond with you too." The news spread across Unity Station like fire. A human and a Viridian were going to mate bond, and not just any Viridian, but the strange tall female who didn't fit in. Some people were shocked, others were curious, and some were angry. That night, as Lyra walked back to her quarters, 3 Viridian males blocked her path. "You bring shame to all Viridians," one said. "How dare you mate bond with a human?" "My choices are not your business," Lyra said, trying to move past them. One grabbed her arm. "We won't let you do this." Suddenly, there was a noise behind them. A group of humans from engineering stood there, along with 2 large Carracks. "Everything okay, Lyra?" asked Tom, one of Jack's friends. The Viridians quickly let go of her arm. "Just a cultural discussion," one said, backing away. "Looked more like harassment to me," Tom said. "On Unity, we respect each other's choices." The Viridians left quickly. Tom and the others walked Lyra to her door. "Jack's our friend," Tom said. "That makes you our friend too. Nobody messes with our friends." For the first time in her life, Lyra felt protected, valued, and accepted. Tomorrow, there would be more challenges. The mate bond ceremony would need to be planned. The Viridian Council would surely object. But tonight, Lyra wasn't alone anymore. And that changed everything. 3 days after Jack's proposal, a large Viridian ship docked at Unity Station. Lyra was called to the main meeting room, where Captain Moore was waiting with Jack. "The Viridian High Council has sent representatives," Captain Moore said. "They want to speak with you both." Jack took Lyra's hand. "We'll face them together." When they entered the meeting room, 5 older Viridian males sat at a long table. Their faces showed only disapproval. Behind them stood Talek, looking nervous. "Lyra of House Ven," said the oldest male. "You have brought shame to Viridia with your actions." Lyra felt the old fear rising in her, the lifetime of being told she was wrong. But Jack's hand in hers gave her strength. "I have done nothing shameful," she said, her voice steady. "I have found a mate who values me." The council leader shook his head. "This human cannot truly want you. We believe he has other reasons for this false mate bond." Jack stepped forward. "There's nothing false about it. I care for Lyra. I want to be with her." "Impossible," said another council member. "No male of any species would choose a female with her. Flaws." Jack's face grew red with anger. "Flaws? What flaws?" "Because she's tall. Because she's strong. On Earth, those aren't flaws." The council members looked at each other in confusion. "Humans have strange ideas," the leader said. "But Viridian law is clear. A female like Lyra is not suited for mate bonding. It would set a bad example for proper females." Captain Moore, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "On Unity Station, we respect the laws of all worlds. But we also have our own laws. And our first law is that all beings have the right to choose their own path." "This is a Viridian matter," the council leader insisted. "No," Lyra said, surprising everyone with the force in her voice. "This is my life. My choice." The room fell silent. No Viridian female had ever spoken to the council this way. The oldest council member stood up. "You will return to Viridia today. This human will stay here. That is our decision." Jack stepped between Lyra and the council. "You can't force her to go. We're getting mate bonded tomorrow, under Unity law." "Then you leave us no choice," the council leader said coldly. "Lyra of House Ven, you are now exiled from Viridia. You may never return to your homeworld. Your family will be told you are dead." The words hit Lyra like a physical blow. Never to see her home again, to be declared dead to her family. It was the worst punishment a Viridian could face. "Is this female worth losing everything?" one council member asked, his voice softer. "Your home, your family, your people. Think carefully, Lyra." Everyone looked at her, waiting. Lyra closed her eyes. She thought of Viridia with its purple skies and 3 moons, the home that had never felt like home, the family that had always been ashamed of her. Then she looked at Jack. In his eyes, she saw something she had never seen on Viridia. Acceptance, not despite her differences, but because of them. Lyra took a deep breath and made her choice. Viridia stopped being my home the day I was born looking like this, she said. My home is where I am valued, where I belong. She squeezed Jack's hand. And I belong with Jack. The council members rose together. So be it, the leader said. From this day forward, you are no longer Viridian. As they left the room, Lyra felt a strange mix of sadness and freedom. She had lost her past, but for the first time in her life, she could choose her future. Are you okay? Jack asked softly. Lyra looked at him and nodded. I've been an outsider all my life. Now it's just official. Captain Moore approached them. For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. He smiled. Now, I believe we have a mate bond ceremony to prepare. Unity Station's largest garden was transformed for the mate bond ceremony. Plants from Earth and other worlds made a colorful path. Strings of small lights hung from the ceiling, like stars brought inside. Lyra stood in a room nearby, wearing a dress that mixed Viridian and human styles. It was long and flowing like Viridian formal wear, but in a bright red color that Viridians never wore. Red was for Earth weddings, Jack had told her. You look beautiful, said Anna, a human engineer who had become Lyra's friend. I'm nervous, Lyra admitted. What if the council tries to stop us? They won't, Anna said. Captain Moore has security everywhere. This is your day. In another room, Jack was with Tom and his other friends from engineering. He wore a dark blue suit with a small blue flower from Viridia pinned to it. Ready to make history? Tom asked. First human Viridian mate bond on Unity. Jack smiled. I'm not thinking about history, just about Lyra. The ceremony started with music, a mix of sounds from both worlds. Jack walked in first, standing at the front with Captain Moore, who would lead the ceremony. When Lyra entered, everyone stood. The room was full. Humans from engineering, Carrick's diplomats, Bubba traders, and even a few young Viridians who had decided to attend despite the council's orders. As Lyra walked toward Jack, she held her head high. She wasn't hiding anymore. Jack's smile when he saw her was so bright it made her heart jump. Today we celebrate not just the union of two people, but the spirit of unity itself, Captain Moore began. Lyra and Jack have found in each other what we all seek: acceptance, understanding, and love that sees past differences. The ceremony mixed traditions from both worlds. They shared water, as Viridians did. They exchanged rings, as humans did. They spoke promises to each other in both languages. When Captain Moore declared them officially mate-bonded, the room filled with cheers and clapping. Jack gently took Lyra's face in his hands and kissed her, a human tradition she had come to appreciate very much. At the celebration after, beings from many worlds came to congratulate them. Even Talek appeared briefly, looking uncomfortable but nodding respectfully before leaving. Look, Jack said quietly, pointing to the door. A young Viridian female stood there, taller than most, with the same wrong features as Lyra. Her eyes were wide with wonder as she watched Lyra and Jack. Lyra went to her. Hello, I'm Lyra. I know, the girl said. Everyone talks about you. I'm Mira. I wanted to see if it was true, that someone like us could be happy. Lyra took the girl's hand. It is true, and you're not alone. Later that night, Jack and Lyra stood on the observation deck, looking at the stars. Lyra's homeworld was out there somewhere, now closed to her forever. Do you regret it? Jack asked. Choosing me over your world? Lyra shook her head. I chose myself, really. And you were the first person who ever made that seem possible. They watched as Unity Station slowly turned, bringing new stars into view. I saw how that young Viridian looked at you, Jack said. Like you were a hero. I'm not a hero, Lyra said. I just stopped believing I was wrong. That sounds like a hero to me, Jack smiled, pulling her close. 6 months later, 2 more tall Viridian females arrived on Unity Station, seeking new lives. Then 3 more. Word had spread across Viridia about Lyra, who had found happiness by being herself. 2 years after that, the Viridian Council quietly changed their policy, allowing exiled Viridians to visit home. They didn't admit they were wrong, but it was a start. And when Lyra and Jack's first child was born, a daughter with blue skin and human eyes, she was welcomed by a community where being different wasn't wrong. It was just another way to be.